really delighted to hear from Charles Graham, Department Chair of Instructional Psychology and Technology at Brigham Young University. He's a professor. He studies technology-mediated teaching and learning with a focus on the design and evaluation of blended and online learning environments. He also researches the use of technology to enhance traditional teaching and learning. Charles has authored over 50 articles in over 24 journals and over 20 chapters related to online and blended learning in edited books.
My focus today is going to be talking about engagement and how we can increase engagement, particularly our communities of engagement in a blended context. And so there's the link to the slides that you'll have access to. I want to start by just saying there's a kind of engagement dilemma that we deal with in online and blended contexts, and that is that we all know that engagement is positively correlated with so many different outcomes: student satisfaction, achievement, persistence, sense of community, and many others. This has been clearly documented in the research. However, many students in online learning environments struggle to engage, which is also kind of clearly documented. So the dilemma we have is, how do we better encourage and support that learner engagement in these online and blended contexts? So I'm going to share a framework called the Academic Communities of Engagement Framework that I hope will help you to kind of think about the big picture in terms of engagement in your own, in your own learning context. So there's different kinds of interaction that can happen. Students can interact with content, they can interact with teachers and students. And historically, in the online learning realm, we've had too much of a dependence on just the learner content interaction alone. So what I'm going to talk about a lot today is the engagement that focuses on community, human relationships that support engagement. So engagement with instructors, peers, and also a personal community, family. So here is kind of the basic tenets of the framework. In the student engagement literature, there's 3 different components to student engagement: affective engagement, behavioral engagement, and cognitive engagement. So you can think about those as kind of being like the ABCs of engagement. And we have lots of indicators of students being engaged in these different ways. And we also have facilitators of engagement. So some of the facilitators might be learner characteristics, their personal interests and motivation for participating in a particular learning experience, and also their personal environment, what's going on in their home and personal environment, as well as the course environment. So the interesting thing is that most of us as teachers, the main thing we have control over is that course environment. So here is the core beginning, core framing of the academic communities of engagement. We have the 3 different kinds of engagement: affective engagement, you can see here down at the bottom right, behavioral engagement, and cognitive engagement. So at the university level, we've oftentimes focused very heavily on the cognitive engagement. So the energy that's directed towards kind of involvement in the learning activity. And sometimes we don't attend to as well the behavioral engagement or the affective engagement, the emotional engagement. And this is particularly true in online courses where we may provide everything for someone to be really successful, but we haven't put in as much energy to thinking about how to get them interested in the topic or maintain their interest, which would be the emotional or affective engagement. Or we're not supporting them; they don't have the skills, the self-regulation skills to be able to complete things online the way we'd like them to. So this is the framework. at the core of the framework is this idea of the student's ability to engage independently without support from others. And this dotted line around the edge is actually the engagement that's necessary for them to be successful academically. And so for most students, their ability to engage independently is less than what is needed for them to actually have academic success. And so I'm going to share 3 principles with you, and then share some other examples too. But principle 1 is that students need different levels of engagement support. And I know this might seem pretty simple, but if you think about the difference between students that are coming into our classes, here's 2 theoretical students, and I just want you to think about, like, what's the difference between these 2 students? Remember, the black triangle is their ability to engage independently. So this student on the left, student 1, is coming in, and this student's going to succeed no matter what kind of supports are provided to them, engagement supports are provided to them, because they have the independent ability to maintain their interest, their behavioral engagement, and their cognitive engagement. The student on the right is a common student, student 2. This student has a high level of affective engagement. So that means they are excited about taking the class. It might be a topic that they're really interested in, but their behavioral engagement, their ability to engage independently at a behavioral level, is lower. So they may not have the self-regulation skills, the discipline in the online environment, and need help there. And they might also need help with the cognitive engagement part. So we need to think differently about how to personalize and engage students differently in our classes. So in a K-12 environment, they've been thinking about this for a long time. They have this idea of multi-tiered systems of support, where every teacher is providing tier 1 or classroom core instruction that everyone gets, 80% of the students. And then a smaller portion of the students will get kind of small group instruction or additional support. And then usually this is about 15%, 15 to 20% of the students. And then at the top level, tier 3, is where we have students that need kind of more intensive individual intervention. So I just think that this is really interesting, because I think the K-12 systems in general are further ahead of us in thinking about how to support individual engagement and having students at different levels of engagement and how to deal with those. I think we're seeing more of this at the higher ed level with freshman academies and other strategies that I'll talk about later that are happening at the university level to try and address this ability. But we need to think more about this, how to individualize and personalize the engagement support that we provide to people. Principle 2, course and personal communities work together to support engagement. So a second part of this academic communities of engagement framework is that there are two parallel communities that are supporting students. This yellow triangle space represents what we provide as an institution, the course community, the teachers, the peers, the support structures within the course. And then the red around it is the personal community that students bring that help them close that engagement gap. So I want you to think about the difference between these 2 models. So this, on the right, we took our student that's excited about the class but may need help in multiple ways. We're looking at an independent study course or correspondence course, which is a historically very popular kind of online learning. And in these courses, you have very little course support, very little course interaction with instructor, very little course interaction with peers, and sometimes even none. And so you can see that this yellow engagement support that's happening around is not sufficient to get students to the level of academic success that they need. And so this is why success rates in these environments are very, very low, because it's leaving all of the rest of the support to the personal community of the students. Whereas in this other environment, you can see that the majority of the support is being provided at the course level. Just the edges need to be filled in terms of behavioral and affective support by the personal communities of the students. So I want to give a couple of examples of this. At our institution, BYU has created a institution that's called BYU Pathway Worldwide. And in this institution, it's geared towards helping students who have not been traditional college-bound students to become ready for college and to enter into the online learning world in college. And so at the very beginning, the year prior to their actual enrolling in college, they start in this BYU Pathway program. And weekly, they have an in-person gathering community where they're given in-person mentors and a group of about 12 to 15 in-person gathering peers. Simultaneously, they're also enrolled in online courses. So these online courses, they also have online peers and they have an online instructor. And so once a week, these students are getting together with each other in the physical community and supporting, with the support of mentors, helping them with their needs for the online work. And we've done quite a bit of research with these in-person gathering communities. Incidentally, this is a blended model because although the courses are online, they've created these in-person gathering communities that are face-to-face, in-person support systems for the students in the online course communities. And one thing that's interesting about that is that after the first year, this in-person gathering community actually goes away, but the peers and the friends that they've created in that in-person gathering community become part of their personal community, which then supports them through the rest of their program. Principle 3 that I want to talk about is the importance of ensuring support, that the support elements, the engagement support elements are provided, is more important than who actually provides the support. So if we look at this model, there's some elements that make up cognitive engagement. For example, instructing and collaborating. There's support elements that make up the affective engagement, facilitating communication, developing the relationships, instilling excitement for learning, and then behavioral engagement, things like troubleshooting and orienting, monitoring and encouraging progress, organizing and managing. So these are, historically in an environment, a teacher, an instructor, or faculty members try to do all of these things independently themselves. And one of the innovations that we're seeing in the online space is that some of those functions, those engagement functions, are being moved to other people. So here's an example from Western Governors University. So Western Governors University, for each student, they actually get assigned an evaluator, a course instructor, and a program mentor. And these people fill different functions within this engagement model. So the course instructor provides instruction and a high level of cognitive engagement, and provides some excitement about the learning and tries to motivate them to be interested in the topic. At the same time, the program mentor here in blue follows up with them regularly about their course plan, whether they're keeping up on their assignments, those kinds of things, encouraging them to maintain strong in their courses. And so is providing this behavioral and affective engagement that the instructor might not be able to do with, 120 students or more. And then the evaluator is mostly focusing on the cognitive engagement side of things. So this is a really interesting model. There's a lot of innovations happening in this space that are, as an institution, you can think differently about how you bring these different kinds of support, engagement support to the students. In the K-12 world, a similar thing is happening. We can learn from them. So oftentimes in an online space, you have the teacher, you have all of the students that are at a distance, maybe in different physical locations, and it's easy for students to disappear in that environment and for the teacher not to be able to see or be able to track and help those. And so one of the things that we're seeing in this environment is that schools are providing on-site mentors. So even though the teacher is an online teacher and engaging with the student around the cognitive aspects of engagement, there's an on-site mentor who's doing a lot of the work to support students with their behavioral engagement and making sure that they're completing assignments and that they're not falling behind and they feel encouraged and uplifted and so this is kind of an interesting model too. And there's also, you see around the side, the parents that are helping and supporting, providing support too. So online teaching online is complex, and engaging students may look different than it does in an in-person environment. So I just put together something at a university level. For example, when we think about cognitive engagement and things that are happening at the university, there's a lot of things that are going on to help the on-campus student engage cognitively. They have walk-in labs, they have personalized feedback that's happening, they have office hour help, they have TA tutorial sessions, and many other things. In terms of behavioral and affective engagement, there are a lot of things that are happening inside the course, but there are also things that are happening at the institutional level to support them, to create the personal communities that are going to help support them in their engagement. So we have institutions like Arizona State University that are creating success coaches for students. That's kind of similar to the mentoring idea at Western Governors University. We have freshman mentoring programs that are providing support, engagement support outside of the course. We have clubs and organizations that help build personal communities of support. And so my question to you as you think about your own institutions is, how will these cognitive supports that have traditionally been in the face-to-face environment be replicated in the online space? Okay, now I'm going to transition. I know that I have just a few minutes, but I'm going to transition to engagement at a course level. And I want to give you a resource. This is a free book that we've created that you can access. You have the slides, but this talks about engagement in several different competencies related to blended teaching specifically. And so typically when we think about moving from a traditional learning environment to a blended learning environment, there's some challenges to engagement that we face. These are faced in the traditional environment as well as the online environment. So for example, pacing. In a face-to-face environment, we struggle with pacing. We might have a class where people are, some are slow and some are fast, right? And so Blended learning can help us address this pacing issue and personalize the pacing. Preparation, how do we help students prepare for class? How do we modify the instruction based on the student needs? That's a challenge to engagement in a traditional class. Participation, how to provide all students with meaningful opportunities to participate. In a traditional class, think of maybe a class of 50, you have an online discussion, it's difficult to have everybody have the opportunity for meaningful engagement. Oftentimes you have just a handful that are engaging deeply. Personal interaction, how to create opportunities for one-to-one interaction with students. Personalization, how to customize based on individual needs. Place, how to enable authentic learning inside and outside the classroom. And then practice, how to provide students with lots of opportunities for practice with feedback. So these are some of the challenges that blended learning can address. And so I'm going to jump to the end. I'm going to give you a chance to ask questions about academic communities of engagement, but I'm going to show you at the end of these slides, I've put in a bunch of videos about how each of these engagement challenges can be addressed through active learning. So several videos that are showing flipped classroom in action. Online preparation, so how a video for how online assessment can be helped to help students become more prepared to class. How you can use online learning to change pacing in large enrollment classes. How you can increase authenticity and access. How you can increase personal interaction with students using online. And then pacing, and I think I have another personal interaction and feedback online. So I don't have time in this 20 minutes to show all those videos, so I wanted to provide you with those as a resource, and just end by saying, really future learning systems aren't going to be differentiated by whether there's blended learning going on, but how we blend and how we choose to engage in blended environments. So here is a list of the slides, some research papers on blended teaching and engagement for those who want to explore this more deeply, and access to a free book on blended learning.